The evening air carried a bite of winter. The streets were quieter than usual, the lamps casting pale circles of light on the cracked sidewalks. Emily pulled her coat tighter as she walked home from her late shift at the diner. Life had become a routine: work, walk home, silence, and sleep. Since her husband had passed away 2 years earlier, loneliness followed her like a shadow she couldn't shake off. As she turned onto her block, she froze. On the steps of her apartment building sat a boy, thin, maybe 10 years old, hunched over with a tattered backpack clutched to his chest. His sneakers were worn through at the toes, and his small hands rubbed against each other, desperate for warmth. Emily hesitated. This wasn't something she usually saw. Her first instinct was to walk past quietly, to mind her own business like most people did, but something in the boy's eyes stopped her. They were wide, fearful, and exhausted, the kind of eyes that told stories without words. She knelt a few steps away, her voice soft but steady. "Hey there, are you okay? Do you live around here?" The boy didn't answer right away. His gaze darted away as if he was deciding whether to trust her. Finally, he whispered, almost inaudibly, "I don't have a home anymore." Emily's breath caught. In those 5 words, she heard a weight heavier than any child should carry. She looked around, half expecting an adult to appear, but the street was empty. It was just her and him. Emily's heart raced. She knew nothing about this boy, where he came from, why he was here, or if someone was looking for him, but her heart ached in recognition. She remembered the nights after her husband died, when the silence of her apartment had felt unbearable, when she had sat on the edge of her bed wondering if she could face tomorrow alone. The boy shivered, pulling his backpack closer. That sight broke something inside her. "You need a home," Emily heard herself say before she could stop. Her voice trembled, but she meant every word. "And I have an extra room." The boy lifted his head, staring at her in disbelief, as though kindness was something too rare to believe in. His lips parted, but no words came. His eyes brimmed with tears he fought to hide. Emily stretched out her hand carefully, "Just for tonight." She assured him, "It's warm inside. I'll get you some food. You don't have to be alone out here." There was a long pause, a battle of fear and trust playing out inside the boy. Finally, he nodded. Slowly, hesitantly, he placed his small hand into hers. That single gesture felt like a sacred exchange. Inside her apartment, Emily gave him a bowl of soup and watched as he devoured it, spoon scraping against the bowl. She noticed the way he ate, not greedily but desperately, as if each bite might be his last. Afterward, she handed him a blanket and led him to the spare bedroom. "You can rest here tonight," she said softly. The boy clutched the blanket tightly, his voice barely audible. "Thank you." The following morning, Emily woke early to the sound of quiet footsteps. The boy was standing in the kitchen, nervously holding the empty bowl from the night before. I washed it," he said timidly. Emily smiled, her chest tightening. "Thank you. What's your name, sweetheart?" He hesitated before answering. "Daniel." As days turned into a week, Emily slowly pieced together Daniel's story. His mother had passed away when he was younger, and his father, unable to cope with the loss, turned to alcohol. When the drinking got worse, so did the shouting and eventually the abandonment. Daniel drifted between shelters and nights on park benches. Emily listened in silence, her heart breaking. She recognized the same ache of loss in him that she carried in herself. Yet, in the midst of his pain, Daniel carried a gentle spirit. He asked questions about her late husband, about her job at the diner, about simple things like why the neighbor's cat always sat on her windowsill. His curiosity and quiet gratitude slowly breathed life back into Emily's weary heart. One evening, as they sat at the small kitchen table, Daniel whispered, "Why are you helping me?" Emily looked at him for a long moment. Then she said softly, "Because I know what it feels like to need someone, and to wish they were there." Daniel didn't reply. But the way he leaned his head against her arm spoke volumes. Weeks passed, and Emily found herself torn. Her heart had grown attached to Daniel, but her mind wrestled with doubt. Could she afford to take care of a child? Was she strong enough for this responsibility? What if she failed him the way so many others already had? Late one night, overwhelmed by uncertainty, Emily sat at the kitchen table with her head in her hands. She almost convinced herself that perhaps it was best to contact social services, to let someone more capable take over. But the next day, when she returned home from work, she found a small note on the kitchen table. The handwriting was uneven, but the words pierced her heart. "Thank you for giving me a home. You make me feel safe." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she clutched the note. The doubts that had haunted her melted away. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about being present. That night, as Daniel slept peacefully down the hall, Emily realized something she hadn't admitted even to herself. She needed him as much as he needed her. Months later, Emily stood nervously in the courthouse, Daniel's small hand tucked firmly in hers. The paperwork was ready, the decision made. She had applied to become his foster parent, and today it would be official. As the judge finalized the approval, Daniel looked up at her, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and joy. He squeezed her hand and whispered, "You needed a son, and I needed a mom." Emily's breath caught. She bent down, hugging him tightly as tears spilled down her cheeks. In that moment, her broken heart found healing, and Daniel found the family he thought he had lost forever. When they walked out of the courthouse together, the sun was shining, warmer than it had been in months. Emily glanced at Daniel and smiled. "Ready to go home?" she asked. He nodded, grinning for the first time in a long while. And as they walked hand in hand down the courthouse steps, Emily realized something profound. Sometimes, in giving others what they need, we discover what we were missing all along. This story reminds us that compassion can heal not just the receiver, but also the giver. That sometimes the emptiness we feel is only filled when we choose to open our hearts to others.